Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Phil West. I served for 18 years as Director of Common Cause. I'm not speaking for Common Cause today, but on the basis of my own analysis, I'm also part of Clean Rhode Island, which is a coalition working toward this ethics reform. I want to start by saying that both Representative Marcello's repeated introduction of this legislation and the Speaker's hard work on it this spring are priceless to the state, and we are moving in the right direction. We need to celebrate that together. I believe that the Speaker's bill is the one that will obviously pass. I'm not naive. And I think that there's a lot of good in that bill, and I want to speak to some of that good and then some of the specifics that are there. I think that this creates an opportunity for the General Assembly to do the right thing, to let the people vote to restore the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. And I can't tell you how happy I am to see this moment finally come. The proposed both of the proposed amendments, but I'm speaking now to 8189, the Speaker's bill. It accomplishes two essential goals from my perspective. It restores the Ethics Commission's jurisdiction over all public officials in the state of Rhode Island. And second, it preserves the Rhode Island Ethics Commission's unique authority to adopt a code of ethics for all public officials and then to prosecute wrongdoing by any public official in the state. I'd like to mention each of those points briefly and then talk about the blackout question at the end. First, 8189 restores the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. For 7 years, the General Assembly has members of the General Assembly have needed to trust one another because there was no watchdog to deal with ethics violations, and you can't always tell what your neighbors are doing. And that's part of the painful reality of being here. I believe my experience over 18 years here was that the vast majority of legislators are trying very hard to do the right thing and are honest and trying to avoid conflicts of interest, but sometimes you can't tell what your neighbors are doing. They have been trying to, most legislators, I believe, have been trying to do the right thing without any neutral arbiter of conflicts of interest during these 7 years. And I think trying to conduct government business without a neutral arbiter of conflicts of interest is like it would be to play professional football without referees. As you pass this resolution, I believe it will be a first step toward bringing the referees back onto the field. Everyone in this place will have a sense that the game is more fair, and the people in the stands all around you will have a sense that the game is more trustworthy, and that will be a good thing. So often in Rhode Island, we're quick to criticize ourselves, and sometimes I hear people out in the community criticizing the legislature as if to say they're all a bunch of crooks. I hear that a lot. And the answer to that I always say is that's simply wrong. And I would point out to you that we have some of the best process in the country. The Speaker and Rep. Marcello alluded to it. In 2013, the Better Government Association in Chicago, for the third time, did a state ranking of laws relating to conflicts of interest and open government and several other things, and I can give you the citation of that. And they ranked Rhode Island best in the country, not second, not fifth, not 20th, first in the entire United States. In 2015, the Center for Public Integrity did a ranking looking at the Ethics Commission, and they ranked our Ethics Commission first in the United States. I think we can be proud of that. And what you're doing with this resolution that the Speaker has put before you today is to finally put that ethics commission, which has been responsible and thorough and careful, back in charge of this most crucial area of your work together. Now, I want to point out that the Irons decision in 2009 made the observation, this majority made the observation, that what it would take would be a sufficiently explicit constitutional question before the ballot, before the voters. And I want to suggest that in one small way, the text before you may not be sufficiently explicit on the question of the Ethics Commission's authority. And I trust that it is indeed the Speaker's intention that it should be sufficiently explicit. And I would ask you to look on page 1, line 15. Page 1, line 15, where it says the Ethics Commission shall have the authority to investigate alleged violations. And I would ask you between investigate and alleged to add 2 words, and adjudicate alleged violations of the Code of Ethics. Very simple change, but it will make this text sufficiently explicit to make no question in the mind of any future Supreme Court justice that your intention was to restore the Ethics Commission's jurisdiction in this area. I'll be glad to answer questions about that in a minute, but let me go ahead and talk about the second thing, which for me has been a primary goal, and that is to restore, to preserve the Ethics Commission's authority to adopt a code of ethics for public officials. Now, in a word of candor to you, when I spoke to you, Mr. Chairman, and when I've spoken several times with the Speaker, there have been some who have thought the Ethics Commission should not have that unique authority in the United States to adopt a code of ethics for all public officials. And I have argued strongly that it must, and we should retain that. But I would say that I can understand the arguments on the other side when people say no other ethics commission in the whole country has that authority both to adopt a code of ethics and to prosecute wrongdoing. And you all know, and the members of the public should know, that in Congress and in most other state legislatures, when there is a complaint filed against a member of a legislature, it is often a committee of the body that makes those decisions. So by agreeing to restore the Ethics Commission's authority to adopt a code of ethics, to adjudicate ethics commission violations, but also retaining the authority to adopt a code of ethics, you are taking a step forward that really will be exemplary for the other states across the country, and indeed for other countries around the world. Now, there's a compromise here that I want to point out, and that is in lines 11 and 12, and that is currently the Ethics Commission approves changes in the rules in the code of conduct by a simple majority, and this raises it to a 2/3 majority of the members of the commission. I don't believe that. Some will say, well, they shouldn't do that. I think it's an appropriate change. As I've watched the commission over the years, I've seen the commission approve a number of rules, and most of them have been unanimous or by votes of 8-1 or 7-2. And the only time I remember a 5-4 vote was in May of 2000, when 5 newly appointed commissioners rejected overwhelming public testimony to eviscerate a gift rule. And that was a mistake. They switched from zero tolerance to $150 on an occasion, or $450 in a year from any interested party to any public official. And I won't get into that rule now, but I'm simply pointing out that that's the only time I can remember a 5-4 vote. There may have been others, but that's what I remember. So I think that this raising from a simple majority to 2/3 is appropriate, and I think that it will not cause problems in the process of the Ethics Commission, which is careful and deliberative.
Just to clarify, that is no longer the rule.
I'm sorry?
Those amounts, that's no longer the rule.
No, it is not.
Okay. I just
thank you
want
for
to
that.
clarify that for
They went
perhaps
back-
those listening at home.
They went back a couple years later and changed it to $25 an occasion, which I think everybody would recognize as appropriate. And I don't remember what the vote was on that, but it was heavy vote, including some of those who made the wrong vote in 2000. So I'd like to end by making a couple comments about the question of a moratorium. Already we're hearing criticism of this on the radio and in other places as if somehow this is an effort to cover up wrongdoing. I simply do not believe that that's so. There are moratoriums like this in other states, and I believe that the blackout window simply recognizes that the Ethics Commission cannot investigate a particular complaint in the brief window of a time before an election. And that's really what we're dealing with. What happens when someone files a complaint in September, there's no chance that the Commission can investigate. Common Cause was involved in 1991 in putting the present time limit on that says the Commission must investigate and reach a finding of probable cause within 180 days with 2 possible extensions for good cause shown. And I think that's a reasonable time limit, but it's simply not going to happen with a complaint that's filed during the election season. And I think that once members of the public and campaign staff and everybody else understand that you can't file an Ethics Commission complaint during that period, they will still be able to present the facts as they understand them. If they think that Rep. Ruggiero has done some terrible thing, they can go to the press with it, and I'm sure it'll get some coverage. But it won't entangle the Ethics Commission in trying to sort out what that means. And I think that's the difference that we're talking about. This is not an attempt to close off debate or to hide complaints. Now, having said that, I'd like to ask that you, in your wisdom, would take this out of the constitutional amendment, because I honestly don't believe that the question of a blackout window, especially with the specifics that are here, deserve to be in the Constitution. The Constitution should be very spare, the fewest possible words. And I would ask you, when later witnesses appear, I believe the Ethics Commission is quite prepared to look at this and to pass a rule, or you could do it by statute. And I think either way would be appropriate. It's perfectly within the General Assembly's jurisdiction to pass a statute that says this is what the window is going to be. And if you propose such a bill, I will come and support it, and I think many others will. It's the right thing to do to have some kind of a blackout window. But the details are too many and too complicated to put in the Constitution. So I've spoken too long, but I'm very grateful for your time, and I'm immensely grateful to all of you and to the Speaker for moving this forward. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. West. Any questions?